In this next part of the tutorial, we're going to go over creating ladder logic to control these circuits. So in order to do so, we're going to have to start with a ladder. So we're going to go over here and select ladder for AB PLC, and we're going to drag in a main row. Now I'm going to show you some of the basics of how this PLC works and a bunch of elements that can be combined to create the function of your pneumatic circuit. First, we're going to start with some inputs. Here, we're going to pull in this examine if closed unit. And you can see here it starts with a question mark. Now we need to associate this with something. Let's try associating this with the push button that's hooked up to our PLC input card. We want to associate it with the input of the PLC, so we're going to type in, and we want the first push button, so we're going to select in 0. Now you can see that's been associated with it, and you can see it selects that input card and that input. Now we need this to do something. For now, let's just make this light up that lamp. I'm going to pull in output energize and connect it to the right side of our ladder. It doesn't matter what you name this for now, as we're going to associate it with an output. I'm going to type in out because we want to associate it with one of these PLC outputs. In particular, we want out 4, which is connected to our lamp. Now we're going to connect these two and run the simulation so that when this button is pressed, the lamp is lit. This is the simplest form of input to a PLC. Next, we're going to modify this so that you need to push 2 push buttons in order to light the lamp. So we're going to pull in another examine if closed. And again, we're going to associate this with an input. In particular, we're going to associate this with our second push button, which is hooked up to input 1. Now, if we connect all these and run the simulation, you can see that if we push either push button, the lamp does not light. But if we push both, the lamp lights. This simulates a logical AND function. We can modify this to function if either of these buttons is pressed. Pull this over here and just connect here. Since these are wired in parallel, either of these button presses will trigger the lamp lighting. This simulates logical OR function. what if we want to determine one of these functions of the PLC based on if something is not pressed? That's what we're going to do with this operator. We're going to examine if open. So the circuit will only complete if whatever we associate it with is not pressed. We're going to associate this with our input 2. And now we can see that normally it's active, and if we press the first button, the lamp lights up. But if we press input 2 and try to do the same thing, the lamp will not light. This has been a brief summary of how to work with inputs with PLC.